Hello, it's Craig Freshley. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about Together We Decide, the new book that I had published. What was it? Maybe 2 weeks ago or so. Those of you who know me know that I would love to hear from you as early as possible in this meeting. So first of all, can you tell me how many of you have a copy of the book? Can you raise a hand? You can figure out how to do this, right? In your Zoom webinar, you have an opportunity to raise a hand. Thank you. I'm seeing the hands go up. We've got 4, 5, 6. Okay, I'm guessing about half of you have the book, and I'm hoping have at least flipped through it. And just to get us started, I'm wondering if one of you would be willing to join me. So take your hand down, and if you're willing to join me on the screen, put a hand up. Fran's willing to know. Anybody willing to join me? What I'd like to do is just ask your reactions. I'm going to ask you, what did you think of the book? What did you like about it? Before I start talking, I'd like to hear from you. So Jim is willing to join me. Jim Martin is willing to join me. Anyone else? Let's try this. Jim Martin's going to come aboard. Jim Schlieset is going to come aboard. Can we have a third volunteer maybe to come join in this little talk show while I can ask about the book? And Henry's going to come aboard. We have all men. I can't help that. Thank you, men, for volunteering. But I'm also encouraging people of all genders to put a hand up if you'd like to join the conversation. Of course, you don't have to. So any one of you, jump in. You've had a look at the book. What did you like about it?
I found that in reading it, it would sort of illuminate different areas that would be interesting for me with a variety of different groups and different situations. And I found that to be really quite a plus.
Okay. Applicable in different situations. What else? Somebody else. What did you like about it?
Well, I really like the format of how the book was laid out. In terms of kind of telling a story or telling a narrative that was more than just do this, but explaining kind of the why and the how a little bit more. How it helps people connect.
I love that comment, Henry, because you're going to hear from me in a few minutes a lot more about the format and the narrative and how it's laid out. I want to explain to you a little about how I came to that. Jim Martin, you want to weigh in on this? What did you?
Yeah, I've been making books for 40 years, and so I really appreciate what a book feels like in your hand. And I mean, you've heard my comments about this before, and I'll agree to what the two of you, Henry and Jim, said about the contents. But and I've got a book on the way, and someone said this to me, and I think it's really true. When you've got a book in your hand as opposed to reading it on a tablet or something, it gives the content a little more value in the reader's mind. They think, wow, this has been through editors' fingers and a publishing house, and then you look at it and you open it up, and it's a real book. And and you open any page, and that's what you were saying, Henry. I think about the layout. You open any page, and it's got something that grabs your eye. It's got a diagram or a bullet point or something. Here you think, oh, where does that start? That must be interesting. And here you got a quote here.
It's great to hear you say that about the design, Jim.
You can jump in anywhere, and and just start reading, and you really can as far as the content
Jump
goes.
in more. Well,
Yeah.
that really pleases me also, because in the early stages, I thought of the book as a reference. Early titles were even a reference guide for group decision making. It's still a guide, but it's not as wide in scope. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask you guys to sit down in a sec. I want to see if any one of three of you have a last quick comment. But otherwise, I want to move on. We got a lot to cover. I really appreciate these opening quick. Here's what I liked about the book. Would any of you like to make another comment before we change?
I'll add a very small thing, and that is I totally agree about the value of a book. I have dozens of things on Kindle, which I generally get a chapter or two into, but I love books. So
Right.
I'm glad that it's come out as a nice big book. So,
Nice.
and I'm really enjoying it, reading it, everything. So there we go. That's
That's
it.
really nice. That's really nice to hear, Jim. Thank you. And thanks again, you guys, for stepping up, the three of you. Always wanting to widen the conversation. Folks, I'm going to put a little agenda into the chat. I can't help myself, right? You all know that I'm a professional meeting facilitator, and I know that people appreciate structure. So here's what we're doing for the 50 minutes of this webinar. We just had some first reactions. And next up, I'm going to spend a little time telling you about how I wrote this book and how I came up with the concepts in the book. We'll see how much time we spend on this. You can see a little further in the agenda, it says key concepts. A lot of those will come up when I tell the history, if you will, the how, but any that are left over, I want to make sure I cover. And I have this little idea that in many respects, this is 4 different books in one, and I'd like a chance to explain that to you. I have a little question for you at the end, and we plan to be done by 1:30. Okay, that's the deal. 1:30? That's not the deal. We plan to be done by 1:50. That's the deal. For those who don't know me, let me look at the list here. Is there anyone here who doesn't know me that well? Well, there are a few that don't know me well. I've always had an interest in group dynamics, was very interested in government, in high school and in college. I went to University of Maine, and then I went to the Muskie School in Public Policy. I worked at the Maine State Planning Office, and I also worked at the Maine Development Foundation. That is the quickest biography you'll ever hear, but that's it in a sentence or two. In those jobs, at the Maine Development Foundation and at the State Planning Office, I was in a lot of meetings, and I thought that we can do better. And I started taking notes. And so this is where the story begins, actually. In that period of time when I was working at, where was I at that time? At the Maine Development Foundation, I would say the genesis of this book began in 1995. That is the year that I met Carolyn Estes. And from that time up until 2003, I made a lot of notes. Take a look at this little video here, right? This is a folder, oh, truck outside, sorry. This is a folder I found in the basement this morning of notes that I took while I was in meetings for years, taking notes on how I thought things could be better and what I thought would be a better way to make meetings. I was confident enough in myself to leave that job in 2003 and start my consulting company. Not only to start a consulting company, but to write a book. Carol and I refinanced the house. I left my job and I blocked off 3 months to try and write a book. And this is what I came up with. Notice the date at the bottom, December 29th, 2003. I told myself that I'm going to do the best I can between, I think it was for the months of October, November, December. But end of December, I am done with this folly and I got to get back to work. I made this draft, and notice that this particular draft, it says edits from Tree Bresson. If you notice, Cavanna Tree Bresson is on the back of my book, and she was someone that I probably met at a conference in Eugene, Oregon. She was living in a communal kind of housing situation. She put this edition of the book in the bathroom with a sign that invited edits, and people made edits on this 2003 draft of the book that I also found in the basement this morning. I struggled right from the start with how to organize the content. This was my first organization of the content, and you can recognize some terms here like framing and creativity, good in everyone. If you've had a chance to read the book, you know that these concepts are in there. But I tried to organize it this way, and I tried to organize it this way. At one time, I thought about calling it peace decision principles. And these are the 5 things that you got to do. And under each thing is these things. And here's another way to organize it: by peace, by creativity, and by efficiency, and yet another way. But here we can start to see the difference between beliefs and actions. Right from the get-go, 2003, I have believed strongly that beliefs matter. You know, it's not just actions. There are many how-to books, but few that bring in the, here's another way to call it, faiths is a way I describe it in this outline: faiths and ways, beliefs and actions, present day table of contents, attitudes and practices. Those are the 2 things right there. This is kind of fun. I see that there's a question, and then I'm going to move along. Let me just finish this little section. I think there's a break coming up. Hold on. Is that true? Not really. So let me see what there's a question. So hold on a minute, folks. I just want to take a look. Oh, Roxanne, you're just saying hello. Hi, Roxanne. Thank you. Okay, I'm moving on. And I'm telling you about this early draft in 2003. I printed the thing then, and I kept making notes on it. And here are some stuff you'll recognize, right? Here's the steps. These are described in the current book. Here's how they look in the current book. Here's an early draft of life cycle of a decision, and here's how it looks today in the current book, Together We Decide. Here is the spectrum of decision methods. Now, this is a concept that I'm going to take some credit for 20 years ago. And I've been, promoting this idea and experimenting with this idea, the spectrum of decision methods. When to use what method? I think that this is a liability of group decision making, is applying the wrong method to the wrong stakes. Here's what it looks like today. And by the way, some of these graphics, I've even taken a step further, worked with a graphic designer. Her name is Brittany, and have made even fancier graphics for rollout. I'll probably show you some others of these too. We're going to roll ahead to 2006, right? Something happened there. And I'm going to show you what it is. I made another draft and continued to keep working on the book. This one has the name Jessica Daphne on it. She was an employee of Good Group Decisions, and when we weren't busy serving clients, we were working on this book. These are all chapters, if you will, and in each one of these folders is a printed document that I worked on over and over again. In 2010, I published a book called The Wisdom of Group Decisions. It's really a compilation of tips. Some of you are familiar with this book. entirely self-published. I made the interior design for this book in Microsoft Word. It came off of my computer. For the exterior design, I hired a designer and another designer. For the interior, I subcontracted with an indexer and with a proofreader, and I was the general manager, and I figured out how to self-publish, and that's what I did with this book. It was a little bit of a side road off the main path towards Together We Decide. In 2014, I met Tanya Hall, the CEO of Greenleaf Book Group, at a conference. It was in Washington, D.C. And she took the first book that I wrote. I don't have a copy at hand, The Wisdom of Group Decisions. She took it home with her to review. I told her that I was interested in making a next version of that book. And she gave me the invitation that Greenleaf Book Group would be happy to take me on as a publisher, as an author, and they serve as my publisher. They set me up with a developmental editor, Chris Ben-Uwe, and he was great. He asked me a lot of hard questions, and I just did what he said. I wrote answers to the questions. Still, I struggled with how the book should be organized. Somewhere maybe in the late 2016, 17, 18, I basically took over the Quaker Meeting House for about 3 or 4 days in the winter. It was between like Christmas and New Year. I think Carol was working. We didn't have any place to go. And I arranged the tables in the Quaker Meeting House, and I set up all my sections. And here you can see, if you look carefully, these are chapters divided into 3 sections. There's one over here and one in the middle and one over here. And here's, like, for instance, the attitude section. And these are all the tips that I wrote in each of these sections. So at the same time I've been writing this book, I've been working and putting out these tips. For a time I did it weekly. Many of you know about my tips. They're all available at my website. Here I am in a video explaining to my editor, Chris, my latest thinking about the book. Here I am camped out in the children's room of the Quaker Meeting House. 2020, speed ahead, editor Sally Garland. I'm done with the developmental editor and passed on to my real lead editor, who is very good with me. We go through the book chapter by chapter, and this is a snapshot from my file system. I have a folder called Sally's Rewrites, and you can see each one of these chapters she has redlined, and she made a memo to me for each one of these chapters, outlining point by point. I need you to do this. Please do this. Can you say a little more about this? Can you come up with a story that illustrates this? Can you provide a transition? I'm not sure what it means when you said this. Please clarify. And you know what? I walked around with a tape recorder, not a tape recorder, but my cell phone, of course, and I recorded answers to her questions. And thank God she was willing to work with me in that way. And Sally, if you ever watch this, I really appreciate how flexible you were with me. I could not make it work for me to spend so much time at the computer. That's what it comes down to. So I walked around with the cell phone, with a piece of paper in my hand of Sally's questions. And I recorded answers for her. And this is my file structure of the answers. And I think she had some help at Greenleaf. I sure hope she did. But I also think she did a lot of these herself. They were transcribed, and then she sent back to me a second draft. And that was also track changes. And I worked from track changes from there on, because I knew that at the final stages, it just had to be done that way. And we developed a book with the following table of contents. Sally was super helpful in helping me organize the content. That was one of my largest struggles, preventing me from getting this book out the door. Folks, I'm going to stop talking in just a second, okay? I would like to finish up the little history of writing the book. I hope you find it interesting. And then, of course, I want to take your questions wherever you want to jump off. Oh, I see somebody asked one just then. Oh, Roxanne's out of here. She says, blasting off. Thank you so much, Roxanne. It's really fun to connect with you. Roxanne used to be the director of Maine Preservation, and she was also a director of the Maine Downtown Center, and now she's moved on to Colorado. She runs a preservation organization there. So it's really neat that you could join us, Roxanne. Diagrams. Another whole big thing, right? Some of these diagrams are old. I've had these concepts in my head for years. And for the book, I drew all 12 diagrams by hand, kind of like this. They were pretty bad. That's what my diagram looked like. This is what Chris turned it into. Chris, I'm sorry, Chase. I knew when I said it, it was wrong. Chase Quartermain was my designer, and he did all of the interior graphics. He also did the whole interior design, from choosing the fonts to the use of the little silhouettes. You know, there's subtle and not so subtle, as Jim pointed out, design elements all through this. It is a complicated design because, as Jim said, there's something almost on every page to draw you in, and that was very intentional on my part. I wanted that, and I asked for it. Sometimes I think maybe it's a little too busy, but Chase did an outstanding job of reflecting what I wanted. Here's the tree of collaboration that I drew very poorly by pencil, and here's what Chase came up with. And then since I've got a new version of the tree of collaboration ready to go. If you follow me on social media, you're going to see this revealed one of these days. Oh my gosh, then once the book was written and the graphics were starting to get rolling, we had a whole bunch of things to do, like figuring out a title and a design. And again, on social media, if you were following me at that time, I had a little contest for the title. I chose the winner. Out of 6 choices I provided my social media fans, this was among the choices, and it was far and away the favorite. So that's what I chose. Then we had to do cover design, of course. I think Chase did a great job here. I got these wonderful quotes for the back cover. I don't know if you know these folks, but of course I know each of them, and I'm very grateful. Jim's on the line, and he's one of the people on the back cover. Nice. And you can see Cavanna Tree Bresson has changed her name, and I'm just delighted that she's been on this ride with me for 20 or more years. Greenleaf Book Group is no messing around. It was about this time last year that they provided to me this production schedule. At that time, the working title, WT, a working title, was Collaboration Essentials. But here's all the dates, and I made my calendar around this. I blocked off time and would refuse work from clients at the dates that I knew they needed me for. And if you look way over to here, I think I've even got another slide. Look at that date, retail publication date, 9/13/22. And you know what? We set that date a year ahead in the future, and we hit it right on the date. I'm very pleased at the work with Greenleaf. I'm going to name some more names quickly, but Sally Garland, of course, was my lead editor. Julie Marchand also helped. Chase Quartermain, I mentioned already. Jen Glynn was my project manager, and she was terrific with me every step of the way. Christine, my distribution manager. Chelsea, marketing. Scott James was my digital marketing strategist for Amazon sales in particular, and he was just terrific to work with. Justin Branch has helped me every step of the way, and I think that I received excellent value from each one of these people, and from this company right down the line. I've been very pleased. What else we got here? Okay, look, here's the current outline of the book. You might have one in your hands, or you might recognize this. I'm going to take off the screen share because I want to encourage you to raise a hand. if you want to, you can join me on the screen. I'd like to know what questions you have or what aspects of this you would like to talk about. I got plenty more to say, but if I can have some indication of what you want to talk about, that would be great. You can write a question if you like, but if you raise a hand, I'm going to promote you. You're going to come on camera and you'll get to ask your question that way. I'm going to go to Kay Whitmore. I'm really glad that you raised your hand, Kay. It'll be nice to see you and hear from you. Hello.
Oops. Hello, Craig.
Hey, we can hear you great and you look good. Hi.
Hi. Just a question about decisions made virtually. Any observations about that? Has it changed? Any, insights there?
Yes, of course, it's changed a lot of things, but tell me a little more. What do you mean, like virtual meetings, probably you're thinking?
Yeah, and just, how people participate. It's just a different dynamic, when you can be on mute or you can, hide your screen or, or you're concerned about talking over someone, all those dynamics.
Right. They're very different dynamics. There's no doubt about it. And you mentioned some of the things that are different, about talking in a virtual environment. Do you mind just hanging out on the screen there for a minute? Okay,
Sure.
if you don't, yeah, that's really, I'm sure you're used to it because we all do it, right? Hang out in meetings on screens. And I'd love to hear from some others. And if you wanted to join this discussion, I would promote you. What's different about a virtual environment? I think maybe even a more pointed question is, how do the things in this book translate into a virtual environment? That's something that I was really very concerned about, right? As I was writing the book, the meetings were changing. And then COVID came and they changed really fast. We were on a slow trajectory towards virtual meetings. COVID came, we had to do it. We went very steep and all in. And as a meeting facilitator, I've had to go all in. I cannot, none of us can opt out of the virtual meeting tide. Okay, so the things that are different, I think that the things you alluded to, the level of engagement is probably the biggest difference, right? It's way easier to be way less engaged. If you're not on your screen like you and I are right now, and I can probably guarantee that some people participating in this webinar are doing other things right now. It happens all the time, and not only during the open and close, but there's the engagement on the shoulders, right? When we went to a personal meeting, an in-person meeting, we would get there a little early. We would chit-chat in the breaks. We would chat in the parking lot after. All of these things, we have developed a belief, build rapport, camaraderie, unity, transfer information, all kinds of benefits, and we've lost those. There's no doubt about it. Yet there are other benefits with virtual meetings. From a person who really believes in inclusivity, we can't deny that virtual meetings allow for much greater inclusivity in the public arena. Town meetings and participation in public forums and council meetings has increased because people are doing it from their living rooms. It's easy. And it's hard to knock that. If more people, even if they are participating from their living rooms, families, parents are able to dial in to the meeting virtually. So I know I've said some very basic things here, things that we all know. Let me see if anybody else has raised a hand or wants to chime in on this. Kay, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I know how thoughtful you are. And if you've had a chance to look at the book, and if you think that there's anything in there that is applicable in particular to virtual meetings or not, I'd like to hear about that. And you don't even have to answer that if you don't want. I'm going to see what Henry wrote. I have a large number of virtual meetings, and it's very hard to identify and work with people who are contributing the lead. Very hard. He first says, to identify, to even know who they are. Yeah. Here's another thing. I'll chime in. Virtual meetings for me are not memorable. This has taken me a while to figure this out.
Interesting.
But clients come back to me. Now we've been in a virtual environment. I've been in a totally virtual environment with some clients for 2 years now. And a client comes back to me and I can't remember last year's meeting. It was only last year. It was with these same, but I can't for the life of me, I put my head in that meeting. You know why? Because it was this screen. We all know why. But I think that's starting to take a toll on me and on us as unified collaborators, is that virtual meetings are not memorable. Any comments from UK? And then I'm gonna go off screen and we'll move on to something else.
Yeah, the only thing that I find, and going to the comment that was just made, the bigger the meeting, the harder it is. And so really trying to use breakout rooms and chats and, connecting people in smaller ways seems to be helpful. But yeah, I don't have any great insights.
Right.
Everything you said, I agree with. So
yeah. And we're trying to learn how to do that. That's another comment I'm going to make. We are learning how to do this, people. In terms of a new communications tool, we are at the dawn of a new era. The internet age is the dawn of a new era, and we are clumsy. We're clumsy with email. We're clumsy with virtual meetings. We're doing half and half with different platforms and different hardware. And I'm just naming that we're not doing it very well, and that's okay. We shouldn't be expected to. In the whole course of human evolution, we've been doing this for like 10 seconds, and we haven't got it figured out. Let me take a look at what Bill Mann wrote here. This is like a nice personal note from Bill. We've known each other a long time. Bookshops in Greater Portland that are selling it. Sherman's actually. There's Sherman's on Exchange Street. They told me that they're going to carry it in all their bookstores. And I'm going to do a signing in Sherman's in Damascotta on Saturday. That'll be kind of fun. Okay, let's take a look. Anybody else Jim, you want to come back on the line? And I'm going to say goodbye to Kay. Thanks. It's always fun to see you, Kay. I really appreciate that you dialed in. And I'm going to invite. Shall we bring both the Jims back? They both want to come back. Let's bring them both back. But then I'm going to call for some more gender balance and encourage, if there's any other women out there that want to jump in and join the conversation, just put a hand up, and I'll put you on video, and you can ask your question or make your comment. So yeah, Jim, well, how do you pronounce your last name, Jim? Can you tell us to it?
Yes, Schliestedt.
Schliestedt. Okay, yeah, please. What's your question or comment?
I was just going to speak in praise of the virtual meeting in at least in one context, and that is the band that I'm in, Sadigata, is based out of Cambridge, and I'm an hour and some north of that, and someone else is an hour in a different direction. When our last big gig was March 1st of 2020, and then we were into the pandemic. And at some point, a couple months later, I was really missing seeing all these people, so I started us up, and all 6 of us met for 2 hours every week for over a year, and then went to every other week and so forth, as we started to, semi-normalize. But it was really an important process for us.
That's great.
It made a big difference. And the thing about showing up, being there on time and all those sorts of, that matters just as much.
Yeah, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's the basic stuff. Yeah, when at one point I was very discouraged, and I was like, this book is going to be irrelevant. But I did get some counsel that the principles are timeless and applicable anywhere. So let me go to Jim Martin quickly, and then I'm gonna move along. I just want to cover a lot of stuff here. Jim Martin, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when you said we're just learning, we've been doing this for 10 seconds. I realize that I'm going to use the word value again. I feel that there's a different sense of value, maybe because it's screen time, and it's like watching someone on television and thinking, wow, that person is a star, or I don't know, and
Right.
deserves my attention. And so I'm going to look at them and pay attention to them in a different way.
Right. I
And
like how you
whether you're
said that.
talking with someone on the phone, or yelling to them out the window, or seeing them on a screen, or sitting next to them, there's a huge difference in those four um,
My ways of
amounts of proximity. And yeah, I think it's just a different amount of value that we probably all attach. Some may think that online meetings give the person you're talking to less value. Others may think it's the other way around, but it must be different, I think.
Right. And I think the participant, I'm going to take you off camera, Jim. Thank you so much. The participant.
Yeah, had a question, another question, but
Oh, okay. Well, let's hear your question then. I don't need to reiterate your comment. You said it very well. Let's hear your question.
I wanted to know what the most enjoyable part of the writing process was for you. You've been working on it since 1995, and you started writing books in 1980. So I know
Right.
you.
Oh my gosh. Folks,
I
Jim
know you.
has known me a long time, and he remembers
Remnants, yes.
that I wrote a book after high school. I took a year off after high school, and I wrote a book, and like a story, and Jim remembers.
It was philosophical. It was great. No, so what was the most, or what were the most enjoyable phases of the process for you?
I think it's now.
When it's done.
The publication
Okay.
phase. It was hard for me. And looking back, I dragged you through those pictures of all the time. I'm even going to use the word tedium of going. I'm a little embarrassed even now when I look back at how much effort I spent in trying to figure out how to reorganize it, how to present the material. Let me put it in a more general way, that I spent time on things that in the end didn't matter. I would say so. Yeah, Jim, I see you look askance at that, and fair
Yeah.
enough. So you're right to call me on that. Is it that they didn't matter? I don't know. I just can't help believe that I could have taken a shorter line
Yeah.
from those concepts that I had in my head that I showed you, 20 years ago, to getting a published book. It's been a very long, tedious at some time, hard work. I mean, I have gone away for a lot of weekends and 2 and 3 day writing retreats at a cabin. There are people have loaned me places to go stay and do writing retreats. I've done a lot over the many years, and so the most enjoyable moment was seeing it packaged in a finished product.
Do you think it's finished now? Do you think it's finished?
Well, this is finished. The work goes on. I am going to.
Yeah, because you said you're still working on the graphics, and I didn't know if you were going to optimize
Well, let me tell you
anymore.
what's next a little bit. Let me tell you what I have in mind. This is great. Thanks for coming on camera again, Jim. It's always great to see. It's so fun. Some of you may have known if you heard us chit-chatting earlier, but Jim is in Germany. He's settled there, made a living, has a family. But we were friends in high school, Jim and I, and he's been a friend and dear supporter ever since. This book, well, actually, there was a review just yesterday from Kristen Arnold, friend and mentor. professional colleague. She's in Arizona. Sometimes she's in Canada. And she says this, she was expecting, she didn't maybe use that word, but I could tell she was kind of probably expecting a cookbook, a how-to book. And this book is not just a cookbook. It's not a how-to book. It is a how-to book blended with spiritual principles, if you will, or with values, beliefs. I call them attitudes. Because I wonder if I haven't compromised the popularity of the book, because it's not strictly a how-to book. It's also, like I said, a philosophy. And I've also come to settle in a place where, if that's the case, if I have compromised the popularity of the book by putting in a lot of stuff in here, not just saying beliefs matter, but I'm also saying, here's Craig's beliefs. So what? That's fine with me. Because two things. One, I don't think you can separate the how-to mechanics from beliefs. This is what I've learned in my career. It requires both. And I make the case in the book that there are some bad beliefs that will hurt group decision-making, and there are good beliefs that will help group decision-making. And I'm also trying to make the case in the book that you should do these beliefs: inclusion, look for good in every person, make a fair and open process. You should do these things not for moral reasons or even for spiritual reasons, but for practical reasons. For practical reasons. I want to take spiritual principles into the mainstream. You might even say this is an intentional blending of principles and values and how-to techniques, because I would like mainstream technicians to get the value of spiritual principles. So that's one thing that the book is trying to say, in addition to a how-to guide. It is a how-to guide, absolutely. I hope that people find a lot of very practical techniques in here. And oh my gosh, there's so much more to say. I couldn't put all the practical how-to stuff in here. It's also, I'm telling you, the 4 books in one. It's also a call for cultural change. And I may have compromised the popularity there too, because it's a bit of a political statement. It's saying that the pendulum has swung too far in favor of competition and in favor of capitalism. And if we are to save ourselves as a species, we need to swing the pendulum the other way towards collaboration, inclusion, innovation, creativity. Otherwise, we're going to kill ourselves and kill each other. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but that's and of course it is not that simple. I shouldn't pretend otherwise, but I'm also not willing to pretend I don't see something. And this is what I've seen over my 60 years of life, is that competition and capitalism and those ways of decision making have done a lot of damage. And I would like to see some change. A fourth thing that the book is it's a bit of a biography for me. There's so many personal stories in here. It's so fun for me to like read my own stuff, because it reminds me of all the good times I had in all the meeting rooms behind all these little stories. Folks, I'm going to just pause here a second. If you can believe it, we're coming to the end of this webinar, right? I really do want to end at 1:50. That's what I promised you. There's 6 minutes left. I have a little survey for you because I want to announce that I am going to host a free webinar at exactly this time next month. It's going to be called How to Make Good Group Decisions. And it's going to be a monthly thing, a free webinar every month. I guess I'm shooting for 4th Wednesday at 1. And I actually have some great guests lined up for next month, professional meeting facilitator Laird Schaub and meeting facilitator Karen Gemnig are going to be joining me, and they're going to talk about the book from a facilitation perspective. What do they like and don't like? And I know that Laird and probably Karen have some critiques. You know, there's many different ways to facilitate, and Laird doesn't agree with everything I say in the book, and we're going to talk about that. I'm really looking forward to it. I just wanted you to know, so that's next. I hope you'll help me promote the book. If you believe in it and the messages in it, I'm trying to increase impact, you know, and this is right now, this is the best way to do it, is to promote and push this book. In addition to that, I'm trying to grow the company. I would like to bring on more facilitator trainers. I would like to convert my content into e-learning content to make it much more easily accessible. And I'm looking for a partner. I'm looking for somebody to help me, both with the content conversion to e-learning, but also in a more general way as an operations manager. So if you know of somebody, or if this interests you yourself, I hope you'll get in touch. My hope for the book is that it inspires people both on an individual level, but also professional. I hope it inspires people to become meeting facilitators. Dozens, hundreds, thousands. We need a lot of meeting facilitators, in my opinion. Meeting facilitators are in many respects peacemakers. And so while I'm hoping it inspires people in that way, I'm also hoping it inspires individuals to find peace within themselves. There's a lot of tools in here, I hope, just for that purpose. Participating in group decision-making is really frustrating. It can be gut-wrenching. It can be really, really hard. And I have put into the book some things, some ways that I have found helpful in trying to make peace. And that's my hope also, is that it helps you make peace. What's my time? 1:47. Let me grab this URL for you. You just hold on a second. I got one question for you. And what I'd like you to do is stay right here in the webinar while you answer this question, right? We haven't ended yet. There's a few minutes left. And if you look at that URL, you can click on that. It says one question. You can click on that. And I'm asking for your feedback on future topics. I told you I'm going to do a monthly free webinar. Next week, my guests are lined up, 2 professional meeting facilitators. Next month, pardon me. But what about the month after that, and the month after that, and the month after that? Of all the stuff in this book, or of all the stuff that I could talk about, what do you most want to hear about? What do you think would be of most interest to people? I'm even going to stop talking for a moment, give you a minute of quiet to jot some responses. Thank you. Thanks for doing that, everybody. Are there any last questions or comments? You can type a question into the Q&A if you like, or if you want to raise a hand, I'll promote you to come on the camera, and you can ask your question that way. I'd love to hear from somebody we haven't yet heard from if you want to ask a quick question. All right, folks, I'm not going to keep you. I really appreciate that you've joined the webinar today. Thank you. And thank you for your faith in me and for your interest in Together We Decide. It's been my pleasure. Have a great afternoon.